call this meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the RTM. It's also the budget meeting. It's May 14th, 8 o'clock. It's actually 8:04. I'd like to start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call. Representative Flanagan.
Representative Abiyulukma. Representative Bryant.
Present.
Representative Amori.
Here.
Representative Baker.
Here.
Representative Black.
Here.
Representative Brooks.
Here.
Representative Bruno.
Here.
Representative Davis.
Here.
Representative Dakovich. Representative Flanagan is here. Representative Gernalch.
Present.
Representative Hall.
Here.
Representative Hanlon.
Here.
Representative Hanson.
Here.
Representative Imperato.
Here.
Representative Ingraham.
Here.
Representative Janover.
Here.
Representative Junkus.
Here.
Representative LaRue.
Here.
Representative Maynard. Representative Malisi.
Here.
Representative Nargi.
Here.
Representative Ricchio.
Here.
Representative Sandler.
Here.
Representative Salvaggio.
Here.
Representative Stanwyck.
Here.
Representative Sullivan is here. Representative Torelli.
Present.
Representative Toohill.
Here.
Representative Walker.
Here.
We have a full RTM, and it's been a long time I haven't seen that. All right.
Excellent. All right. All right. So thank you, Representative Flanagan, and thank you for staying, Representative Gernalch.
You're very welcome.
Item 2, approval of minutes of the previous meeting. Does anybody have any changes to those minutes of the April meeting?
Chris, there'll be amended minutes.
There's amended minutes. That's right.
That's right.
Yeah. So the minutes have been amended. So I guess we actually have to vote on those as amended. Is there any other changes to the amended minutes? Representative Tuo, did you have a comment?
Well, yes, I do.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The only comment to make is that, yes, they were changed. I think they came out today. There were two, at the last RTM meeting, there was some handouts, and those are now attached. So anybody that wants to take a look at the handouts, you know, they can get them.
Okay. All right, does anybody have, so I think we need a motion to accept them because they have been amended? Correct. Yep, okay. Is there a motion to amend the minutes? Second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the amended minutes as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Oh, and we do have, for the members, we still have the remote mics. So when you are going to speak, we have to pass the mics around. I noticed that happened at the last meeting, so that's still the case tonight as well. So if I call on you, wait till the mic comes before you start speaking. Okay. Item 3, reception of communications, reports of committees, and citizens' petitions. The first thing I'll do is remind everybody that this body, the RTM, has passed a resolution of the quorum, and that means that the moderator can ask people to leave the meeting if there's a problem. Second piece, I have a letter from Mr. Finch, Finance Director. Dear Chris, please be advised that the town is elected to participate in the Neighborhood Assistance Tax Credit Program. In order for programs to be eligible, they must be approved by the RTM and forwarded to the state in July. In an effort to comply with this timetable, I respectfully request that this item be referred to the Administrative Services Committee to enable RTM action in June. I will send that to Admin Services, Representative Lisi. Do you have a copy? I have a copy. I also have a piece that was emailed to me. The tax collector is asking for a change to a fee of $2 imposed on delinquent property tax or installments thereof on any motor vehicle which delinquency has been reported to the Commissioner of Motor Vehicles of the State of Connecticut pursuant to the provisions of Section 14-33 of Connecticut General Statutes as amended and must be paid before such tax is deemed to have been satisfied. I'll be sending that to Rules and Ordinances, Representative Bruno. And then the only other piece that I'm going to mention in the communication is something I sent out to all the members of the RTM, just to make everybody aware that The RTM was complained against to the FOIA Commission by Mr. Cook. I testified at the FOIA hearing, and the commission ruled in favor that the RTM did act appropriately when we eliminated the citizens petition rule. So just want to make everybody aware of that. And we are on to item 4. Representative Stanley,
Can I have the microphone, please?
can you pass the microphone down, please?
Yes, at this time I'd like to move item 4, I'd like to move item 4 to item 13A.
Okay. So we
I
need-
second that.
Yep, so that'll pick up after item 13. So the motion on the floor is to move item 4, the reports from town entities, to after item 13 on the call, which is after the budget proceedings of the meeting tonight. Is there any discussion on this motion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We now have an item 13. Thank you. 13A. All right, so we will now begin the budget deliberations. We were recommended a Board of Finance budget for a total between the Board of Ed and the town departments of $99,445,447. First piece of that is item 5 on the call. To consider and if appropriate, approve the recommendation of the Board of Finance and of an appropriation of $51,353,854 to the Board of Education operating budget and capital for fiscal year 2013-2014. Representative Moore?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. In our budget meeting, the RTM Education Committee voted to unanimously approve the the Public Schools Board of Ed operating budget in the amount of $51,303,854, which comprises an increase of $1,005,952, or roughly 2%, 1.99999% over last year's approved budget. That was voted on and passed unanimously in committee. Should I talk about the capital budget now, or start with the operating? Should I speak to the capital budget now or wait?
Yep, it's part of the item, operating budget and capital.
Okay. The committee also unanimously voted to approve the capital budget as recommended in dollars by the Board of Finance with the following amendment. The funds for the boiler replacement at Tisco and Murphy schools were funded at $35,000 each, and we amended our motion to be, and it was carried to be amalgamated into a $70,000 fund for boiler replacement in the category of elementary schools with no specific amounts allocated by school. And I'll put that in the form of a motion.
All right, so your motion, to summarize, is a $50,000 reduction from the operating budget and no change in the capital budget for total dollars.
No dollar change in the capital budget. And did you get the bottom line figure? It's also in the Board of Finance, what Jim issued today, $51,303,854.
Yeah, okay. So the motion on the floor is to approve the amount of $51,303,854 for the Board of Ed operating and capital expense. Representative Baker?
Point of order.
Yes.
Should we have a motion to accept the Board of Finance recommendation first and then have the Education Committee report? I'm just wondering if that's, I want to make sure that everything's correct. Is that right?
Representative Black?
I don't think we need, we've got a motion, let's deal with the motion.
Okay.
I mean, we can
All right.
do that
I just wanna
with
make
the
sure
town
these are-
budget, it'll be,
Yeah.
we'll probably have
Okay.
multiple or one amendment, and we'll discuss them
Okay.
separately, but I think unless, I mean, this is what the committee's come up with.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Representative Black.
If he's happy with it.
Okay. Representative Davis?
May I second the motion?
Uh,
Do we need a second?
we don't need a second. It's the committee report.
All right.
So we're good.
I just want to get it moved forward.
Sure. Representative Walker?
We have a microphone?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. If I may, through you to Representative Amori, was there serious discussion, and if so, what were the conclusions in the Education Committee about educational cost sharing this year from the state, what we anticipate versus what we might actually receive?
There's always serious discussion. There's never assurance about what we're going to receive. I could ask for comments if maybe more has been learned since that meeting. Can we ask for clarification from the Board of Ed on that, because they may have learned more.
Yeah, I mean, we can check. I see representatives here, so.
Mr. Hannon, hi.
I am here on the revenue side of the town budget. ECS is covered there. We had anticipated last year was 1.8 million. I don't have the town budget book. I believe Mr. Fitch has that, but it is on the revenue side, and I believe it was flat. Mr. Fitch, can you confirm that?
Actually, the Board of Finance did budget a small increase in the ECS, and that was primarily due to the governor's budget. One of the changes the governor made in the formula was how the income components were calculated, the wealth components. And in the governor's formula, there was more of an emphasis on income and less of an emphasis on property wealth. And what's coming out of the appropriations committee.
Black.
Perhaps you could come up to the microphone here. The fellow folks out in TV land won't be able to hear you, and it's an
Thank you, Representative Black.
answer.
Should I start from the beginning, or?
Might as well.
Yeah. I mean, basically, the revenue side of the budget is dealt with primarily by the Board of Finance. The RTM typically focuses on the expenditure side. But as it relates to ECS, the governor's budget made a change into the wealth formula. And as you know, the ECS formula has many components. But when the wealth formula changed, there was more of an emphasis on income versus property wealth. And that boded well for Branford. So Branford was going to get additional money because of that. The Board of Finance, in doing their revenue estimates, based on their experience, knows that at times, for lack of a better word, you can't always rely on the state because changes occur. And so part of that increase, only half of that was actually budgeted, half of the increase from year over year. And then what happened is it went to the Appropriations Committee, and the Appropriations Committee went back and put more of the emphasis on property wealth, which, as you folks may have guessed, has an adverse impact on Branford. And so the number that is in the Board of Finance revenue estimates is less than what the Appropriations Committee is looking at. And that's generally true of state aid in general. So the Board of Finance, when they set their mill rate on Monday, will likely look at the revenues again and try to incorporate some of those state changes, and also look at some of the other non-tax revenues, I would imagine, and see if there's any offset to that, coupled with whatever changes this body may make tonight.
Thank you, Jim, very much. It's just a very significant concern when you talk about the state and the governor. If, as we continue to plunge as a state deeper into the red, apparently there's another $200 million shortfall that they're working on the details of now. Can't bode well for any town such as ours, realistically.
Correct. I mean, one advantage.
It's a very good education budget overall. I think it makes a tremendous amount of sense, as Representative Amori said.
Yeah. I mean, one advantage Branford has relative to other communities is that our reliance on state aid is relatively small. Now, that's typically bad for taxpayers because the residential taxpayers pay most of the burden of the budget. in an environment of state cutbacks, it means that there's less of an impact. So from that perspective, I guess you could say it's a good thing. But again, that's something that we'll look at with the Board of Finance on Monday's meeting.
However, one more thing, if I may, Jim.
Yeah.
It's not a good thing that we as a town get, 7 cents back on the dollar, every dollar we send to the state. Instead of getting an equal dollar back, we get 7 cents, and it's pretty much been that for approximately 12, 15 years now, as with most other shoreline towns. So, I mean, we're being shorted 93% of what we should receive.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point.
Fair point. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Yep, thank you, Representative Walker.
Thank you, Jim.
Further comments, discussion? Representative Toohill.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Just to add to what we've been hearing tonight about the ECS, which is a very big concern to the town, because the town of Branford, this is from the actual book that the Board of Ed gave us on page 40 of this year. The ECS gives to the town of Branford $1.8 million every year. And we just heard from Representative Walker, he's concerned that money might be cut, and if so, then the slack would be taken up by the Branford taxpayer. I was in the car today coming home from Hartford, and I heard an ad from CCM, and I've seen print ads as well. They're saying, contact your state rep and tell your state rep to keep the cash to the towns current. Don't cut the reimbursements or the money that flows to the local towns. So I think that that's a good idea. If anybody else wants to call up to Hartford, and just, this should be stressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Toohill. Is there further discussion on the education budget? Representative Brooks. Microphone, please.
Yell loud enough for the mic, but I don't want to. I just want to say, I've been doing this education budget now for 6 years, so I just want to say this publicly, that this by far was I've in the past have said that the RTM and the Board of Education is somewhat can be adversarial at times, but I do want to commend the Board of Education publicly and say this was the finest budget I've ever seen, and I think the most transparent that we've ever seen. And so just taking a moment to say that. That's all I'll say.
Thank you, Representative Brooks. Is there any further discussion on the education budget? Representative Riccio.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'd like to commend Representative Maury for the job she did this past year on the budget, and I also agree with Representative Brooks that I think it's a very fair budget. I commend the Board of Education for working with us, and I think we did a very good job. So I want to commend Representative Maury for doing a good job on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Riccio. Any further discussion? Hearing none, the motion on the floor is to approve the committee report of approving the appropriation of $51,303,854 to the Board of Education operating budget and capital. All those in favor of this appropriation say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 5 done. All right. Item 6. To consider and, if appropriate, approve the recommendations of the Board of Finance of an appropriation of $47,608,117 for all other town departments, operating budget, and capital for fiscal year 2013-2014. Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move that we accept the Board of Finance recommendation on this item.
All right. Is there a second?
I second it.
Okay.
Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
I would like to make a motion to amend the town's market budget to 2% increase.
I second that.
You have a microphone there, please.
Can I approach the floor, please?
Can you restate your motion, please?
The motion is, I would like to make a motion to amend the town department budget to a 2% cap increase. And I'd like to make a presentation.
He seconded it.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I would like to just spend a few minutes and go down memory lane first and review how we got to this point. This is my fourth year on this body. When I first started, the Board of Education and town department's budget, starting in 2009, was $88,916,000. In 2010, the budget went to $91 million. In 2011, the budget was increased to $94 million. And in 2012, the budget was increased to $96 million. I will add, during this period of time, this country, this state, and this town experienced probably one of the worst economic periods of time in modern history. Your neighbors lost their jobs. College kids couldn't find jobs. They're still living at home. Single moms were working for two jobs. Single dads were working for two jobs, or they lost their job. The DeRoss-Campbell administration, for those people watching on television this evening, recommended a $100 million budget to the town of Branford. The Board of Finance had the fiscal responsibility of recommending a $99.4 million budget. Tonight, we're going to hear in a few minutes what the RTM is going to recommend on the town side, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But I just want to remind everybody, especially my colleagues on the Democratic side, that in the last 5 years, the town budget has increased $11 million in the last 5 years. $11 million. That's probably, if I did my math correct, about a 13% increase over the last 5 years. Now let's talk about how we got to this year. I'll repeat. The DeRoss-Campbell administration, on the town side, and I have to commend the Board of Education subcommittee for doing a great job coming in with a 2% increase on the Board of Education side. But on the town side, that's police, fire, public works, all the non-education departments. We're asking the citizens of Branford to foot the bill for $49,349,000. At least that's what the DeRoss-Campbell administration is asking for, which is a $3 million increase they asked for, which is a 6.3% increase. Again, the Board of Finance had the fiscal responsibility of knocking that down to a 4.25% increase, which still was a $2 million increase from last year. Tonight, we're going to hear from the RTM in a few minutes, and what I'm expecting is probably something close to 3.7% increase, which is a $1.7 million increase in last year's budget. What I'm recommending, ladies and gentlemen, is a 2% increase, which will still give the town an additional $924,000 in additional funds than they had last year, which results into $47,157,000. Okay? Why should you vote for my motion, or my amendment? This is what I would like you folks to think about. First of all, the CPI index over the last 5 years has been stable. As a matter of fact, it's been low. We really don't have a lot of inflation, except for food and gas. But overall, inflation is pretty much intact. The other thing is we're not cutting budgets. And I don't want to read in the newspapers tomorrow or this week that the Republicans are cutting the budget. We're not cutting the budgets. We're just choosing to give less money to spend. Okay, they're still going to get, on the town side, an additional $1 million. To me, that's not cutting a budget. The tax burden continues to fall on your neighbors. The tax burden continues to fall on the taxpayers of this town, including a 12% shift in taxation over the last 10 years due to lack of an economic commercial growth. And if you want proof of that, and thank you, Mr. Finch, for sending me this information this afternoon. The condo liver who's living in Jefferson Woods condo, your taxes next year are going to go up from $2,700 to $2,800. The person living in Turtle Bay condo, your tax is going to go up from $4,600 to $4,500. The person who lives on Featherbed Lane, your tax is going to go from $4,600 to $4,700. The person who lives on Buena Vista, your tax is going to go from $9,300 to $9,600. And the person who lives on Partridge Woods is going to go from $9,900 to $10,000. That's what you're asking these people to pay. And yeah, you're going to say, oh, it's only $150. Oh, it's only $200. But when you have that type of thinking, that's how we got to this point. People's taxes have increased. If it's $200 a year, over 10 years, they're paying an additional $2,000 over the last 10 years. Is that right? Is that fair? So that's what you have to think about tonight. And as you meet with your neighbors over the summer, or when you meet with your friends over the next few months, and they ask you, why are taxes going up? You need to address why. Is it more services? Giving these people more money? The departments more money? What's the return on investment on this? So I ask you to support my motion. The town's going to continue to get another $1 million, additional $1 million from last year. And I would ask that you vote for my motion. Thank you very much.
Representative Brooks? Representative Ricker, can you take your signs with you, please?
That's his. Just a point of information for Representative Riccio. In order for me to support that motion, I would need to know the line items in which you would like to take the extra monies from the committee recommendations.
Mr. Brooks, I can answer that question very easily. But first I want to tell a little story. I am not an expert, I don't think any of us are experts in running a municipality. This is a volunteer job. And to ask us to go through this entire book and go through every single line item, as you know, it's tedious. I feel the department heads, that's what we pay them, should be coming back to us and telling us where they can save that money.
if you want to make it really simple, all we have to do is ask Mr. Finch tonight to take 2 cents from every dollar. 2 cents. 2 cents.
Oh, 2 cents.
2 cents from every dollar in every line item, and you'll get to my number. That's how we can do it. It's not hard. I'm a macro guy. I'm not a micro guy. I don't know enough about running a town to go to the planning and zoning department and tell them, you want to spend $2,500 in postage? Oh no, we're only going to give you $2,300. We're going to go to the Rex department and tell them how much fertilizer to put on the parks in the field? I don't know. Do you know? I certainly don't know. But I'm a macro guy. So I think the department heads have to come back to us and work with the budgets that the money that we want to give to them. Thank you.
Further discussion on the motion? Representative Hanlon?
Just a sort of a quick inquiry. You mentioned that the departments you were talking about, things like police and fire and public works. If you look at those departments, they already are at an average under 2%. So I'm not sure what the point is bringing up those particular ones.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Black?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, through you to Representative Hanlon. One of the problems with the way we approach the budget is when we look at committee by committee on these departmental budgets, a lot of overhead costs, compensation costs, are not in that budget. So as Public Works, you are not really seeing the cost of running that department. It looks like, a 1.7% increase. And you say, wow, that's great. But the problem is all the costs for the healthcare compensation, workers' comp, and now the projected wage increases, a lot of those are in contingency or in, on Ways and Means we see it. But so that's why this is really a very imperfect system, because, we both sit in those meetings and we look at that bottom line and we say, this seems very reasonable. And then you come to the Ways and Means and you figure out your health costs increase. And it's not coming out, and we're adding staff or, filling vacant positions. And, I really think whether it's department heads, and again, the first selectman's office has oversight and really knows where the priorities are. And for us to say, oh, maybe we don't hire a police officer, or we leave this position vacant, our procedure is very imperfect, and we don't have that visibility there. What we just did with the Board of Ed was we said 2%, and they're going to have to live with that one way or another. And I think, if we acted like a regular town meeting, we just vote the budget down. And even if it comes to that, as far as timelines, et cetera, even if we pass this budget, there could be a referendum, and that would take a couple weeks or more. So there's time to make adjustments if the administration wants to make adjustments. But the important thing to me is keeping the overall increase. So, as those, again, it's a 1.7, what you're seeing isn't really the whole cost. And so it gives us really a false impression of the increases.
Thank you, Representative Black. Representative Lisi?
Mr. Moderator, through you to Representative Riccio. A quick question is that now by cutting things to 2%, bringing it down to just this smaller increase, what percentage of that overall increase is actually mandated by contracts? And so how much money are we actually giving the town? Because we're mandated to actually pay a certain amount. And so what is the actual increase that we're talking about here?
If our calculations are right, when we did the numbers, I believe it's about $400,000 we would have to cut. So again, I would ask Mr. Finch to help us with those numbers, but that was my
as we did our numbers, I have to go back and confirm that, but I think that's how we could do it.
Thank you, Representative Riccio. Further discussion? Representative Bernal.
Thank you. This is my 15th budget. And Representative Riccio's way of looking at this budget, it's the first time that I do my own, the first time that the town would be having to do a budget the way I do a budget at home. I look at what my total piece of the pie is, and then I have to allocate that. Instead, what we've always done for the, like I said, the 15 previous budgets I've been involved in since 1990, is we work from the bottom up. And we work up to the top, and we come up with these, and in some cases it's wish lists, in some cases it's things that we would like to do, but we necessarily can't afford to do at the time. And then I can remember there were times in the 90s when things weren't as lean. But let's face it, the economy is still not in good shape. We have a state budget that's in, I hate to say it, horrendous shape. And that's just this year, and what they're looking at for next year, it's probably going to be even in worse position. And so what we're looking to do is cap the growth of the town spending. And what we're going, essentially saying is to the first selectman and to the department heads that they have to decide what is the important parts of their budget. Now, I understand much of the budget is contractual. And obviously they would have to take that into account. But this is nothing different than every household does at home, is you have to take what your income is, and you can't keep increasing your income, though of course as a municipality, that's what we've done. We've raised people's taxes. Can't do that in a household, and I think that this is the time to look at the budget that way. That we have this household called Branford, and we're saying that the town side should be as fiscally responsible as the Board of Education side and get a 2% increase. Again, we're talking a 2% increase. We're not talking a cut in spending, though there are towns that are cutting budgets out there, and there are towns with zero increases going on right now because things still have not recovered. We still have a number of houses that are in foreclosure. We have an unemployment rate that's historically not very high. And I think now's the time, and I just wish that this was proposed a few years ago, that we show a little fiscal responsibility. There are things we want to do, there are things that we probably should do, but there are things we can't afford to do right now. And that's why the administration and the professionals that we pay to run our departments will have to make those hard choices. And that's why we're not coming here right now with a wish list of where the additional cuts would be, because as Representative Riccio quite correctly pointed out, we're not there every day. We don't know what their priorities are. We just know what their totals were. Well, now we're going to have to see the priority and where the money, where they really want to spend the money. And this is something that, though the budget was already done, this is something that departments were ordered by the state. State ordered cuts to many of the departments this year and gave the authority to the various department heads, okay, figure out what's important, figure out where you're going to cut. Well, here we're not figuring out what you're going to cut in terms of actual growth, but what we're telling the administration is that they can't get as big an increase as they wanted. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Gernal. Representative Tu, I think you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
I just wanted to say that we've heard some excellent comments tonight from both sides of the aisle. And our people, they need tax relief. I was at a public service committee meeting about a week ago with Representative Stanley, and she told us that she found out that there were 240 homes in Branford right now in foreclosure. Things are not good out there, and it's the responsible choice, or I think the best way to go is, let's not keep increasing the taxes as much as we have. The 6.4% increase, which was originally proposed by the DeRoss Campbell team, was just too high. And it's our duty as the members of the representative town meeting to cut that. And 2% growth is a responsible growth. I mean, people might say, well, that's too high. I don't want to spend any more on taxes. I think my taxes are too high. They should be cut. Well, there's a lot of people that think that way. So I would just like to add that I think we should support this that's before you tonight. Think of the 240 people whose homes are in foreclosure.
Representative Baker?
I can walk down and get the. I'm not so far rising to just oppose this, but I'd like to ask a couple of questions and make a couple of comments. The first thing is, are you suggesting we ought to trash the committee approach to doing things? We don't, before we had arguments about whether we should follow what the committee recommendations were when we were here on the floor, because that's the real work of the RTM. Now, this particular thing is saying we're going to trash what the committees did, okay? Which, okay, that's what we're going to do, that's what we're going to do. Now, when you also said that if the budget is cut for a particular department, it's up to them to decide their priorities and so forth. I think to some extent that's true, but there's another part to it, and that is this is like a buyer-seller situation. So if you go to the police department and tell them, we want 2% less policing, and we want you to translate that into, taking out of your budget with a crime tolerance of 2%, or whatever it is. So in future, it seems to me that cuts in the budget there has to be a commensurate cut in service. And if we aren't talking about the service cut, then it seems like it's not quite right to me. So to just give the burden to the department heads doesn't seem to be quite right. That's why the committee process is the way that it is. It was originally envisioned that you would have a discussion of what's important from the RTM's point of view or from average townspeople. Is it important for us to do this particular thing or isn't? And we take those things out or we reduce them. That's what we've been doing. But we didn't start off with a cap. Now, if you start off with a cap, that's a different issue. I think they did start off with a cap, but it was too high maybe for some of us to accept, okay? But I think it's very important to see this evening that this recommendation is let's trash the committee work, okay? That's what it is.
Thank you, Representative Baker. Representative Bryan?
Can I respond, Mr. Moderator? Those questions were directed to me.
Do I leave something on? This is the way I cut you off?
Representative Riccio, is that okay, Representative Bryan?
It's fine.
Okay. Representative Riccio?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Representative Baker, I'd like to respond to your questions. First, trash the committee approach. I think it was last year, I went to a lot of these committee meetings, and help me out, my colleagues here on both sides of the aisle. I think we ended up saving $17,000 Was it,
Total.
okay? What's that?
$115,000.
Last year? Was it?
Town side was 17.
The town side, I believe, was $17,000 we saved. Yep, but on the town side, it was 15,000. That was a lot of work to save $15,000. I'd like to know what we spent in heat and electricity and maybe downtime with employees to save $15,000. So when you ask, should we trash the approach? Well, in all honesty, if we can only save, if 30 people can only save $15,000 after 3 months worth of work, maybe we should. Okay? As far as cuts in service, every business and municipality has had to do more with less over the last few years. And if it means we need to give the taxpayer a break, yeah, maybe it means we need to all sacrifice a little bit. Maybe it means, I got letters last year, and I've saved it in my museum. The woman who wrote to me and said, Mr. Riccio, why do you want to close the library down? Well, I just want to close the library a little bit on Sunday afternoons at 5 o'clock when it's hot and I'm not sure a lot of people go in the library at 6 o'clock on a Sunday. I don't know. I mean, I went there a couple of times on a Sunday, and there was nobody there. Yeah. I know that's not very well accepted with some people, especially some people on my side of the aisle. But if it means we have to cut some services to save some money for the person who lives on Featherbed Lane that's going to pay another couple $100 a year in taxes, or the single mom who might be living in a 2-bedroom condo over Jefferson Woods, who's working 2 jobs, yeah, maybe it's time that we think about the taxpayer and cut back a little bit and give some people some breaks. So, Mr. Baker, that's my response.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Representative Riccio. Representative Bryan?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. I would like to address the fact that we are not asking any of the boards, commissions, departments, etc., to cut services, okay? But rather using our resources a little bit more wisely. I know for a fact, because it's public record, that there are 6 towns in the state of Connecticut that are comparable to Branford that are coming in with a 1% or less increase. And they are not cutting services. As a matter of fact, they're increasing things to their Board of Education and programs for special needs children, as well as offering police, fire. One town in particular employs over 100 fire people. They're not cutting their salaries, they're not cutting their benefits, and they're not cutting safety to the town. So just because, I don't know, I can't justify an over 6% increase, doesn't mean I'm advocating that we cut services. After all, my car was stolen in this last round of car thieves that went around stealing cars in Branford. And I'll tell you, the Branford Police Department was wonderful, very caring, and they did a fantastic job. Now, with that said, for us, well-meaning townspeople who are not CEOs, COOs, or CFOs of corporations, to go through line by line, and we do it. There's a number of us who go through this budget, line by line by line. And there is a lot of fat. With that said, these other towns who are not decreasing services, who are actually keeping the same services, trash pickup, snow removal, etc., told their department heads, the towns, the elected council people told the department heads, guess what? Times are tough. Look at your budget, come in with a 0%, or else we're going to go in and we're going to cut. And you might not like what we cut, and you might think it's horrible, but that's how it's going to be. So, as any parent would say to their child, you're not getting an increase in your allowance this month or this year because mommy didn't get a 6% increase at work. I don't know many people who have. If you can't afford to keep your heat at 80, guess what? You keep your heat at 60. Bottom line, it's bottom line budget management. And the fact is that we can, as an RTM, start at the top and say, guess what? No raises. I believe it was the Board of Finance, didn't they, who went through, wait a minute, hang on now, don't say no yet. You haven't heard the whole thing. Who said absolutely no hiring of anybody across the board. That's not necessarily a good thing. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's the best for each particular department. Wouldn't it be better if we say to the department heads, as we have done, justify why you need this amount of money? Now, let's work together and see if we can trim it down a little bit. You know, we're all notorious for padding our budgets a little bit as far as you're going to ask for a little more because you think there's going to be a little bargaining going on. But the bottom line, other towns who have less tax collection rate than Branford have come in and said, 0 increase or we will cut your budgets. So again, this is not about cutting services. This is about utilizing our resources more wisely. And I think that's extremely fiscally responsible because I don't know of anyone, I know more people who are losing their jobs than are getting large increases. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Bryant. Representative Hanlon?
Just a quick point. I mean, one thing that may be lost in all this for people who aren't familiar with the budget process is we're looking at something which has already been through a Board of Finance, an apolitical and relatively financially sound group of people. So what we're trying to do is identify, after it's already gone through, an apolitical process where everybody has looked at ways to take care of these things, and then the committees actually hear them. And we do our best to try and say, as a committee, what can we do? If you want to change the way that is, in other words, if you want to start with a budgeting process that starts with a fixed amount, it's a little bit late in the game to be doing that. I have no problem with listening to any of the ideas that come from over there. I don't want to hear them on the night of the RTM when we're voting on a budget. After we've sat through 4 and 5 budget committees each and try to do our best to alter a budget which has already been altered significantly by a Board of Finance that know what they're doing, believe it or not. We have AAA rating in this town for a reason, because we're a very fiscally sound town, because of a great Board of Finance, and I hope to some degree because we have a great RTM. But you can't come to the game at this late hour and say, now we're going to change the rules. If you want to talk about this next year, I'm willing, but we went through the committee process for all of the public services that I was responsible for as a chairman, and I think we did a good job. We took away almost $50,000 worth of spending. Now, again, to throw that entire process away, that's one possibility. I'm not willing to do that on the night of the RTM budget hearing.
Thank you, Representative Hanlon. Representative Prada.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. First of all, I would like to commend everyone who was involved in the budget process. Very long, very tedious, push and pull, but the end result is we can't spend more than we take in. And what's happening now, just because of what's happening in the economy, we really have to look at that and take hold of that. So maybe we're okay this year, but what happens next year? So we should be prepared for next year. First of all, the management, like any of us who are in private sector business, it starts from the top down. So the management and the reduction of increases comes from the top down. And they work with their managers to be sure that they're not cutting services or what it's going to affect. The other thing we should be looking at is, what do we do with the economic development in this town? So one way to offset what we're doing tonight or talking about tonight is to look at how do we attract new businesses in town, not nail salons, but real businesses, and nothing against nail salons, but real businesses who will contribute to a heavy tax base here. So to, again, shift that off where we are with the public. With the private sector. So Representative Kinlan, I understand your concern, and I've sat in those meetings also, but I really think we have to draw the line somewhere. And maybe tonight's where we draw the line. And we start to look at, here's the cap for next year. You're absolutely right. Maybe the cap is 5% next year. Maybe the cap is 1.5%. But we shouldn't get all the way through the process and then have a surprise. I agree. But we all have to be fiscally responsible for the taxpayer of this town. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Infrado. Representative Davis?
I would like to call the question, and I don't need a microphone.
Okay. Motion's been called. Do you need a second for that? Is there a second? Okay.
No discussion.
Yeah, no discussion. So the motion on the floor is to call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
I'm going to do a show of hands. All those in favor, hands up. All those opposed? Motion fails. Discussion continues. I'm going to come back to this side. Representative Brooks?
Is that on? I'm gonna just be the first one to say that I'm gonna vote no to this motion, and I'm gonna vote no for many different reasons. One, you didn't really justify to me, except for that it's fiscally responsible, which I could say fiscally responsible is 0%, right? I could say that. So that doesn't really hold water, just that phrase here, okay? Two, when we get, assume we will get reports from committee on these budgets, and it'll be interesting that I think almost every single one of them will be unanimous. So it would seem to me that Mr. Riccio, your side actually agreed with some of the changes that were made and some of the non-changes that were made. Although I do respect you wanting to cut more, and I'm not saying that you're wrong, that perhaps there is more to be done, maybe there can be more done, I find it very interesting that you got up here in front of this board and said the Ross administration 3 times, and then said, oh, we need to make changes, when you clearly could have said it when there wasn't a camera. We should make changes here, here, and here. But being the minority, it makes it very simple to say that. But it's not an easy thing to do.
Representative Riccio? Representative Riccio, can you take your signs down, by the way? Thanks. Representative Ingraham?
Thank you. To respond to Representative Brooks, what's not recorded in those sessions?
Just speak right to it.
I got to speak. At the budget meetings, what's not recorded is everything that was asked that wasn't granted. You don't record a motion that was defeated. So all the discussions.
Yes, you do.
Every cut is.
Every
Every motion that's made and approved is removed. Listen, I'm sorry, I worded it wrong. But every item that was not approved, if there was a cut asked for and not approved, it's in the minutes. It's not recorded here and told to all of us in the room, hey, we asked for this and we got this, we asked for this and it didn't happen. We proposed what was actually removed or added to the budget, not every detail. I might still be here all night. I just wanted to point that out.
The chairs are going to report what happened. So a motion was made and it failed. What more do you want?
Representative Moore?
I will not support this motion. Well, I think that working from a flat increase as a guideline, if this had been proposed earlier, early in the season. As part of discussion in good faith, it might have made tremendous sense. But I sat through lots of budgets, meetings. Believe me, in the education committee, we get lots of wishes for flat rates and flat increases and all of that kind of stuff. I think it is disrespectful to the work that we have done to bring it up tonight and couch it in the terms that it's been couched. If this was a good idea tonight, it was a good idea 2 months ago when we started this. And to bring this and to almost, it seems to me, posturing tonight, it might have been a very good idea could we have worked on it 2 to 3 months ago when this process started. To bring it up tonight, I feel disrespects this process and the work of the RTM, and it troubles me greatly. While I might agree that a 2% increase might be a good thing, and I agree, I don't know that necessarily we've proven it by saying it's a good thing, simply by saying it's a good thing. It doesn't feel right to me to do this tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Moore. Representative Toohill.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Well, you know, first of all, it's never too late for the RTM to consider a good idea. Just because you're hearing about it tonight doesn't mean, you know, that you rule it out. You're elected to represent your constituents, and if you did cut the rate of their tax increase, I'm sure that they'd appreciate it. Also, I'd like to follow up on what Representative Imparato just talked about, economic development. For quite a few years, Branford enjoyed an increasing grand list every year. What the grand list is, it's the total value of automobiles, buildings, and as there's construction every year, that increases the grand list. So as the grand list goes up, the tax burden falls on this brand new construction, you know? So it takes the pressure off the taxpayer at home, with the homeowner, to pay more taxes. So that's what Branford needs to get back to doing. For many years, Branford on the shoreline was the pioneer of business and industry. We were the star of the shoreline. We used to brag the lowest taxes on the shoreline, and yet we provide our townspeople with the most in services, trash collection, counseling center, and we also built sewers across our land. We built water across our lands. Okay, we encouraged industry. Portions of Branford are still zoned for industry, but there's no takers because Branford lost its low tax crown on the shoreline. So it's not there anymore. There's no real incentive to come to Branford anymore. So we need to get that back, and we need to get economic growth going again so the burden doesn't hit the taxpayer, the homeowner. Let's take Costco, for example. Costco wanted to build in Guilford, right near 57, I believe. They blasted the top of this rock. They call it the rock pile. They wanted to build there, but the Guilford people, for some reason, they didn't want it. So they tried to come to Branford, and they would have brought, I believe, I was told, hundreds of jobs, economic growth. They would pay taxes, but so far it hasn't happened, and I don't know why, because they want to come. So this is what we have to get back to. This is our history. Our history in Branford is economic growth, industry, business. And we have to get back to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Field. Representative LaRue.
Okay. I first joined this RTM because I wanted to do what I thought would be best for the town. I thought that was our job here. It feels very disingenuous to bring this up at this time. It feels like a political ploy in every sense of the negative word the negative way of using the word political. I can say that in my committee, which is split like every other committee, every budget item that came through was voted unanimously. There was not one nay vote for any one of them, from what Representative Ingraham was saying before. Sorry, I just went blank. You know, to bring this up now and to do it in this way, I think is such a typical ploy of an election year. And I'm really sorry to bring this up, but I think it's real, and I think we need to say this out loud. And I hope to get some support for this from across the aisle. There were opportunities, and when we were having our caucus meeting earlier, we heard time after time, unanimous vote, unanimous vote, unanimous vote. You know, there was a time and a place for this, and maybe there is a way that this could be dealt with differently, but it starts even before it comes to the RTM. The Board of Finance, as you said, is supposed to be either bipartisan or apolitical board. And we need to work with the information that was given to us in the order and in the way that has been set up for us to work with it. To come in now and say it when we know what the final result will be from this vote, most probably, is really just seems to a ploy for attention and for some folks to be able to say, look, I tried to do this, when it was really unrealistic to ever even attempt to do it this way. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Root. Representative Flanagan?
My only comment on this is that I think the committees did a real good job this time around. Of all the years I've been on the RTM, you know, we did look. I would hope maybe certain other committees would have made deeper cuts, but I can only speak for the two committees that I was on, and I think we worked together. We you know, unanimously voted to make these various cuts. I would have liked to have more. My concern is on the 28 years that I've been on the RTM, I don't think there has been once that we have had no tax increase to the taxpayers, where you look at some other surrounding towns and they're holding the line. Now, maybe you think $150 to $200 is not a lot of money, but you take that over 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and you know, we've been progressively asking each taxpayer every year to pay more, pay more, pay more. As one of the representatives pointed out there, we have over 240 foreclosures in Branford alone. As far as economic development goes, last count, where there was 57 commercial businesses that were vacant in this town. We basically have no commercial development in this town. If we don't have commercial development, if we don't have Costco, where we get tax revenue, there's only one other place we can get taxation. We got to go to the taxpayers. I think we seriously need to look at economic development and see how we can do to offset that. And you know, I applaud the committees this time around. I guess in all the years I've been on it, this is the first time that I have heard a unanimous vote of all the committees. You know, so that's basically my comment on tonight.
Thank you, Representative Flanagan. Representative Salvaggio?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Well, I guess a couple of things. I want to mention that in terms of the economic development, as my colleagues across the aisle have pointed out, we are in an economic downturn. So there's usually not a lot of economic development during an economic downturn. But I did want to emphasize and a point that Representative LaRue made, and a number of people have made, about the fact that many of these committees passed unanimously. It does not mean, and I think the town should understand, that there was a lot of deliberation, a lot of give and take in these committees, a lot of questioning. And I respect my colleagues who work with me on the committees, because they do ask very good questions, and they do bring these department heads to task. You would be surprised at how we get to the minutia sometimes in some of these committees, asking them some details. So while things have gone through unanimously, I think people should understand that it wasn't just passed along. There was a lot of deliberation, a lot of discussion in those meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Savascio. Representative Bryan?
Thank you. It's sort of sounding like a love fest in here, which is kind of nice. I want to mention, piggybacking on a lot of the comments that have been made, I too came on to the RTM, gosh, back in 88, 89. So I've been on and off here for quite a few years. And as Representative Flanagan said, we've pretty much always increased the budget. And I too joined and rejoined because I wanted to do what's best for the town and the people that I represent. And what was really interesting about this budget cycle is that on my committee, the Public Services Committee, I went in and I have been since the beginning very vocal about the fact that I feel that the town, each department, should basically start again. We come in with a zero-based budget. That's a pain in the neck. It's a big pain in the neck because each department has to come in and justify what they're asking for money for. So committee chairman Doug Hanlon said, great, you want to cut? Where do you want to cut? And together as a committee, I said, here are some of the things that I think that can be done better. Everyone added to the discussion. We had it was amazing. It was really amazing. It was the first time that I felt in all the time that I've been on this RTM that the committee process was working. It was great. I mean, it was tedious and it was long, but we were all able to express our opinions. And in the end, we were able to cut. We found money in a place that not a lot of people knew about. And we were able to take certain monies out of the budget and rework things. Now, would I have liked to have gone to every other committee and made the same argument? Not really. It's a lot of time. That's why I'm only on one committee. That's the only time commitment that I can make. We can't all be in all places at one time. So, my hope in saying this is that no one's trying to, and I'm not, again, I'm not doing this for any kind of political reason. I don't think anyone's standing up here trying to get a vote. I think it's just that when you vocalize at a committee meeting, let's cut, here are some ideas. Sometimes they're heard, maybe sometimes, you feel like, well, I'm gonna vote for this because it feels like the best we can do. So until I come up with another idea, I'm gonna go with this. So I get, and I understand where maybe some people are feeling a little pulled where it might seem, this 2% increase might seem like a good idea, but I'm feeling like if I vote for it, then the whole committee process goes out the window. I really don't feel that's what it's intended for or intended to do. I don't think it's trying to garner anyone votes. It's just trying to work within a reasonable budget and trying to do what's best for each taxpayer. Because again, as Representative Stanlake said, there are over 240 homes in foreclosure. And I really think about those people and other people who wonder where their next meal is going to come from. And then I look at some of the departments that are trying to do and work within their means to actually bring money into the town. And I think if we just all did a little bit more of that, I think we could really make some good, I hate to call them cuts, but some good concessions. We can go with a 2%, which is comfortable. It's actually more than I would even allow because, as Representative Brooks said before, my idea of a good budget is a flat 0% budget. That's it. If it were up to me, it's a good thing I'm not running the show because I would just say no. That's it. I'm not, you all get nothing. That's it. Which is not always the best way to go, but, anyway, trying to add a little levity to the situation. But the point of this is that there are a few departments in town that I've always said, if we modeled them more, the entire town, after certain departments, such as the counseling center, this town would work very efficiently on very, very little money. So again, before anyone votes no to a 2% increase, I would kind of like just take the opportunity to think about it. Again, I don't think it's posturing for votes. I don't think it's doing anything other than we're trying to suggest an idea. If it's not going to fly, it's not going to fly. But the bottom line is I'm thinking about those 240 people or so who are going to lose their homes. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Bryan. Representative Baker?
I just have a couple of comments. First of all, I want you to know that everyone on this side is concerned about those 240 people as much as anyone else. Okay? We're also very concerned about holding the line on taxes. I'd like to do that. Now, in terms of fiscal responsibility, I'm not sure 2% is fiscally responsible. 1% might be, or 4%. I don't know how this number was arrived at. Certainly not scientifically. Somehow 2% was arbitrarily chosen. Any percentage that you would choose would be arbitrary. 2% may feel good. That might be as scientific as it can get. And that's the way it is. So if we were to vote in favor of this, I believe this is represents a process change. You're trashing the work of the committee, and you're saying and potentially we're saying from now on, what we're going to do is we're going to establish a cap some way. Now, actually, it ought to be established in the beginning. You know, maybe back in January, we should tell the first selectman the cap is 1% or 2% or whatever. But recognize that if we do that, you're still accepting the idea of an incremental budget. This method of budgeting is incremental. You choose some percentage arbitrarily. In business, it's the same way. You either do it this way or you do a zero-based budget. Zero-based budget costs more to do, but you have a result in the end that you'll feel a lot more comfortable with as fiscally responsible. Fiscal responsible just means, well, 2% feels good, or 1% might feel good. I don't know what percentage would actually be fiscally responsible, and I don't think anybody can represent any percentage as fiscally responsible. We would all like to see the taxes hold the line. I actually attended every committee meeting, except one, I think, on the budget. And at every one, there was good discussion, debating, and when we report the results, when and if we report the committee results, the motions that failed will be announced and what the voting was. Okay, so it's not, there's not any attempt to say that there weren't motions there, and there were motions that failed because there was a tie. Those are going to get mentioned too, okay? There's not going to be any hiding of anything or trying to make it look like everybody was unanimous. In the end, sometimes an item was debated, they cut it or they didn't cut it, then they come to the end and they say, well, budget overall, do we accept? And it was unanimously approved. That's kind of what happened. And it happened in every committee. And you know, for years, literally years, before you folks were on the RTM, we had this constant problem of, does committee work mean anything when you come here? Or can we just trash the committee work? And guess where most of the complaining about trashing committee work comes from? You might ponder that. I don't think we should trash the committee work, but I'd sure like to work on the process change. If you want to change how we do things in the budget, where we establish the cap in the beginning, I'm in favor of this big discussion on that and a possible process change of how we do the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Baker. Representative Grenache?
I would like to call the question.
Is there a second? Second. All right. Motion is to call the question. It's been seconded. All those in favor of calling the question, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion carries. So we go back to the original motion, which is to enact a 2% cap on all town budgets. Is that correctly phrased, Representative Riccio?
The amended.
The amendment, yes, sorry. The amendment that we're voting on is a 2% cap on all town side budgets. And there's been a request for a roll call vote. Representative Flanagan?
Okay. All those in favor of Representative Ricchio's, yeah, I know, I'm just gonna tell them I have to vote. Although voting is, all those in favor of Representative Ricchio's amendment, voting by saying yes. All those opposed, vote no. Representative Abiulugma?
No.
Representative Bryant?
Yes.
Representative Maury?
No.
Representative Baker?
No.
Representative Black?
Yes.
Representative Brooks?
He's on the moon at this time.
He's out.
Representative Bruno?
No.
Representative Davis?
No.
Representative Dakovich?
No.
Representative Flanagan, yes. Representative Grinalch?
Yes.
Representative Hall?
No.
Representative Hanlon?
No.
Representative Hanson?
No.
Representative Imparato?
Yes.
Representative Ingraham?
Yes.
Representative Janover?
No.
Representative Jonkus?
No.
Representative LaRue?
No.
Representative Maynard?
No.
Representative Malisi?
No.
Representative Nargi?
Yes.
Representative Ricchio?
Yes.
Representative Sandler?
Yes.
Representative Salvaggio?
No.
Representative Stanlick?
No.
Representative Torelli?
No.
Representative Toohill?
Yes.
Representative Walker?
Yes.
Representative Brooks?
No.
The motion fails.
Motion fails. All right, so that amendment fails. We're back to the main motion, which is to approve the town department's budget of $47,608,117. Representative Malisi, would you like to give a report?
Committee reports?
Microphone.
Yeah, microphone.
I don't like all the committees do. We'll wait to finally see what the final figure comes in the motion.
Yeah, I make a motion for change.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'll be reporting on a number of budgets that were heard in the Administrative Services Committee. The first one is the executive budget. As we were going through that budget, a motion was put forward to decrease line item 588288, the BECC, from $10,000 to $500. That motion failed in committee 2-4. Subsequent motion to approve the Board of Finance recommended budget passed 5-1. Going on to Human Resources and Labor Relations, a motion to approve the Board of Finance budget for Human Resources passed 6-0. A motion to decrease line item 533670, Labor Relations, by 10% failed 3-3. Subsequent motion to approve the Board of Finance recommended budget passed 6-0. Board of Finance. Motion to approve the Board of Finance recommended budget passed 6-0. Fiscal Services. Motion to approve the Board of Finance recommended budget passed 6-0. Town Clerk. Motion to approve the Board of Finance recommended budget passed 6-0. Legislative. Motion to approve the Board of Finance recommended budget passed 6-0. Elderly Services. A motion to restore funding to 517000, the regular wages and salaries, to the requested amount failed in committee 3-3. Subsequent motion to approve the Board of Finance recommended budget, including capital, passed 6-0. Human Services. Motion to approve the Board of Finance recommended budget passed 6-0. Elections. Motion to approve the Board of Finance recommended budget passed 6-0. Tax Collector. Motion to approve the Board of Finance recommended budget passed 6-0. Legal Services. A motion to decrease line item 533550, which was counsel and legal advice, by 10%, passed 4-2. Motion to decrease line item 533660, tax appeals, by 10%, failed in committee 3-3. Subsequent motion to approve the amended Board of Finance recommended budget passed 4-2. Probate Court. Motion to decrease line item 533580, microfilming, by $1,000, and to decrease 566100, office supplies, by $1,000, passed in committee 4-2. Motion to approve the amended Board of Finance recommended budget, passed 4-2. East Shore Health Department, motion to approve the Board of Finance recommended budget, passed unanimously 6-0. Information technology. Here there was a presentation made by Deb Karen requesting a line item transfer before the start of the budget year of $30,000 from contingency to communications. And this was to improve the overall bandwidth of the town's IT infrastructure. There has been increasing problems that she identified, and she reported to the committee and how this needed to be fixed. This was heard in committee, and we approved this transfer 6-0, conditional on approval by Ways and Means, which also has heard this item and approved it. A subsequent motion to approve the amended Board of Finance recommended budget, including capital as well as leases, passed 6-0. Board of Assessment Appeals. A motion to approve the Board of Finance recommended budget, passed 6-0. Assessor. Motion to decrease line item 518250 to $28,000, passed 6-0. And the subsequent motion to approve the amended Board of Finance recommended budget, including capital, passed 6-0. Those are all the items that came out of committee.
Okay, do you have a total motion with dollar amount change? I have the number you gave me earlier. Yeah, of a total reduction from the admin services budgets of $28,230.
And I put that in the form of a motion to the rest of the committee.
Thank you.
And for whoever, the battery's dying in this, so it's going to be worthless in about 2 seconds.
Talk louder.
All right, so the motion on the floor is actually an amendment to the main motion to have a reduction of $28,230 from the town department's budget. Is there any further discussion on any of the budget items that admin services heard? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the $28,230 reduction, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Point of information, if it pleases you, Mr. Moderator. I don't think that the person, that the department committee chairs have to go through just the changes, no?
If there was a motion taken, part of the report should be any of the motions and votes that were taken out of committee. So, yeah. Okay, Representative Hanlon, Public Services.
Sure. Okay. We had changes to police and fire and solid waste and recycling. So we'll start with police at our April 24th meeting. Police Chief Halloran outlined his fiscal year budget, which following the Board of Finance reductions represented a 1.85% decrease in salary and wages, with overall personnel costs flat, or a 0% increase. The police chief pointed out that the Board of Finance had already reduced the chief's salary by $9,000, and it also reduced the overall salary account by an additional $156,000 by eliminating funding for a deputy chief and for a school resource officer. And the SRO we can talk about later on if we'd like. And the Board of Finance instead transferred half of those salaries, or $78,000, to contingency. The chief pointed out this effectively eliminated one sworn officer and reduced his force from 51, which it normally is, to 50. He and the police commissioners asked that the committee consider transferring part of this money back to salaries and wages, and the money specifically be used to hire entry-level patrolmen on his force instead. The committee agreed with this logic and decided to move part of the placeholder money from contingency back to salaries and wages. So I'll make a motion to follow the committee's unanimous recommendation and transfer $68,000 from contingency, 588,802 to salaries and wages, which is 51700. You want to do these motions separately, or you just vote on them?
No, you can do it. Do it.
We're doing them back.
The committee also unanimously moved to reduce funding for the police overtime account by $10,000, keeping it exactly the funding level it was last year. So that motion will be to reduce the police overtime line item 51800 by $10,000, which was also unanimous. And I have to move now to amend the actual committee report because there was an issue with one of the particular items. Oh, usually got something working. My voice is usually loud enough. From the purchase services account, the police chief pointed out that there was an increase of $33,000, which represented the amount it would cost to fund half of. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the police department. Last year we voted to allow them to implement a DNA analysis, a Lotus system which allows them
Representative
to
Hanlon?
Yeah.
Can you do this motion to amend after the committee report is complete?
Oh, sure. Why don't we
Do all the committee.
do all the committee
and
first,
then do
and then at the
amendment.
end we'll come back and do that.
Absolutely. Okay. So we'll go on to fire then. At the same April 24th meeting, we heard Fire Chief Ahern outline his fiscal year budget with an increase in personnel costs of 1.3% and an overall budget increase of 1.5%. The chief pointed out that the Board of Finance did not agree with their plan to hire a full-time EMS coordinator, but instead took the salary money and transferred it to the medic shift part-time account to allow the oversight of the ambulance service to be handled by different personnel on a part-time basis. The chief and deputy chief pointed out that the ambulance service was a $1.5 million revenue generator for the town. As a matter of fact, it's the second largest revenue generator outside of the actual taxes. And the actual service itself would benefit significantly from a full-time coordinator, which many towns, as Adam pointed out to me, actually have EMS coordinators, and they don't even run their own ambulance service like Branford does. Branford is one of the few towns that actually makes money, quite a bit of money, by running an ambulance service. So basically, the chief estimated that approximately $50,000 to $60,000 would be made in additional ambulance revenue resulting from this move. He explained this was because it would allow somebody to concentrate fully on billing every single service from every single ambulance call, and because it would also allow our third ambulance. We have 3 ambulances that run, Medic 1 and Medic 2, which are staffed fully all the time. We have a third ambulance that runs when there's a third call. The way it is right now, they try and bring an at-home paramedic in for about $100, for that extra service of bringing him in. But if they can't find somebody immediately, then those calls are lost. A surrounding town or AMR or one of the ambulance services take those calls. So it's a very legitimate point that if you have an on-site EMS coordinator, you also have an on-site available paramedic to immediately staff that the actual third ambulance when it goes out. We miss none of the ambulance calls, nor do they miss any of the ambulance revenue that comes from it. So it's approximated that, as the best they can probably guess, around $50,000 or $60,000 in additional revenue will come from having this position. So the committee as a whole was actually quite convinced by the argument, and we are certainly willing to go ahead and try this EMS coordinator position at least for a year to see how it works out. And the fire department has always been excellent about showing us data, after we agree to something, to see whether it actually is what they said it was. And so at the end of next year, if that's not the case, we can relook at it. So basically, the move was the committee voted unanimously to transfer $61,090 from the medic shift part-time, which is 517,670, to regular salaries and wages, which is 51770. And then also moved $1,250 from the EMS coordinator line item that exists, which is 517,640, to regular salaries and wages. So essentially what they're doing is taking the money that's been already moved by the Board of Finance to a part-time slot and moving it back to a full-time slot. And the way to look at it, the way I look at it, is it's a $1.5 million enterprise, and it really needs somebody overseeing it. Any business that has an enterprise that large, it shouldn't be looked at by groups of people on a part-time basis. So anyway, I'll put it in the form of a motion. We unanimously agreed to make that transfer.
I'll second it.
Second.
Okay, third was our public works budget. Our new public works director, Emil Coviello, and our new highway superintendent, Sal Bonelli, presented the budget, which, following Board of Finance reductions, represented a 0.7% increase in personnel costs and an overall increase of 1.4%. They indicated that there was only a couple of small item increases for things like other fuel and road painting and signs, because as everyone knows, they're digging up a lot of the roads and they have to repay them as best they can and put lines back down again. But essentially, the budget was basically flat with a small increase in overtime still in place following the Board of Finance initial cuts. The committee did not find adequate justification for the $5,000 increase in overtime costs, since additional monies necessary for things like storm-related overtime could be accessed through contingency as necessary. We decided to keep the actual amount of overtime the same, and if we have horrible storms again, then you go to contingency. That's what contingency is for. So basically, the committee voted 6-1, and the person against it was a Democrat, not a Republican, to reduce the Public Works overtime budget by $5,000, and I'll put that in the form of a motion.
Second.
Okay, engineering, we had nothing but a transfer, so there was no major changes. Solid waste and recycling. Solid Waste Management Commissioner Chair Mario Riccozzi presented a budget with a 0% increase in salaries and wages and a 0.6% increase in overall personnel costs. The cost of material handling and refuse recycling collection, in other words, what it costs to have the town actually take the garbage and the recycling away, went down because of a new favorable contract, and it's actually 3.3% less as a budget item than it was the year before because of the new contract. The only difference was he asked for about $45,000 to purchase 3,500 new blue recycling bins, which would be larger, 20-gallon versus 16-gallon, than the current bins, and this was to accommodate a larger volume of recycled materials they're now seeing curbside. The committee agreed that the new bins were necessary, but could not be convinced that there would be a guaranteed cost savings from buying all 3,500 of them simultaneously. In other words, there's no advantage to buying more than you needed for this year. We therefore voted to provide funding for 2/3 of the buckets this fiscal year. So the motion was unanimous, and it was to reduce other supplies 566,900 by $15,000, and that was approved unanimously. And I'll put that in the form of a motion.
Second.
Representative
Okay.
Hanlon, you just have to do the final as a motion, so
One
you don't
motion
have to.
at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Just
luckily I'm done.
perfect. See, good time.
Very thorough job.
Well, I know people want to know. I mean, if we're going to sit here and talk about an hour and a half about the difference between a 2% budget we did, I want people to know what they actually voted on. Okay, the engineering and animal shelters passed unanimously, unchanged, 7-0. And then just to bring back, if I could, very, very quickly, is it not yet?
Not yet, not
Okay.
yet. So,
Gotcha.
your committee report motion, I just need the dollar amount. I think.
Right. So, with the amendment that we're going to follow, we expect to reduce by a total of $46,500.
That's okay.
46,000.
So is that represent?
Yeah, we had to change engineering, but Ways and Means didn't hear their part of it, and it was a vertical. If you want to talk about it, it was a vertical transfer from one department to another. There was not a real change in the budget, so we didn't. It's up to you. I mean, if you.
I thought the committee had voted on that change.
Yeah, well, I mean, but again, it changed our budget, but it didn't change the overall budget. We might as well talk about it now that it's been brought up. Essentially, the engineering department is taking responsibility for the GIS mapping. It was previously under the IT sort of blanket, but it makes sense because the GIS is oftentimes used by people who are jacking their houses up or looking for floodplains. So it made sense that Janet Plasiak and her group in engineering would take responsibility for it. So there was a transfer from IT to engineering of an equal amount. Didn't affect the budget in any way.
Thank you. So your committee report, including the amendment that you're making in a minute, is a reduction of the total public services budget of $46,500.
Yes.
Correct. Okay. Would you like to make your amendment?
Yes. So the amendment was the committee strongly was considering making an amendment to the purchase services. As I started to say, the police department, they've instituted a LOTUS system. It's a DNA analysis system that allows them to go to a crime scene and actually take DNA, have that DNA then analyzed off-site at a professional facility, and then try and match that DNA with people in either national databases or other ones. The database itself was financed through asset forfeiture. As everybody knows, the police department gets to share in the revenues when a crime is committed and things like cars and houses and boats are sold. So through the DEA and through the police having a DEA associated person to deal with these, often in Bridgeport or Waterbury, it can be anywhere, but if we have anybody who's involved in it, our town gets a share of that, and it's called asset forfeiture. You can't supplant normal town activities. You can't use asset forfeiture to pay salaries and buy guns and buy cars, but you can use it for innovative things. It's kind of what you would imagine you'd want to use this money for. Something new, something new and innovative to go ahead and try and solve crimes that couldn't be solved otherwise. So anyway, we weren't sure whether we could partially fund that actual DNA analysis system, or whether we could fund all of it, some of it. He wanted 50% of it in this budget under purchase services. While we absolutely and positively support the innovative spirit of our police department, we are the only town in the state of Connecticut which has one of these systems. And what the committee really wanted to see is whether A, it was being used to solve crime, and it's only been going for about 9 or 10 months, so we're certainly willing to give them a year of this. And B, whether other surrounding towns would start to put samples into it. It doesn't really do that much good for us to identify criminals that only do work in Branford. Burglars go to East Haven, and they go to North Branford, and they go to Guilford. So to sort of regionalize a DNA system would be an excellent way to move forward. Essentially what it would become is sort of a modern day fingerprint. It would allow DNA fingerprints to be kept on people and allow you to go ahead and identify criminals from crime scenes. So anyway, the committee didn't want to turn its back on this, but we also didn't feel real comfortable with already taking on half of the actual Lotus system itself. So we decided that we would fund 1/4 of it, and at the end of the year, have the police department give us an overview as to what's happened. I know that they've already had 5 or 6 actual hits on it. They've had a couple of plea deals because people, once they know that their DNA is at a crime scene, tend to plea out. But we want to see a lot more evidence that it's certainly being regionalized and useful along the shoreline. So what we moved, or what we were considering moving, and couldn't do it until we had information whether we could, and that's why we didn't vote on it that night, and we're voting on it tonight, was whether we can partially fund it, and the answer is yes. The police chief said we can partially fund it. So what we want to do then is remove $16,500 from purchase services from that account, which would now fund part of it, but not the 50% that the chief wanted. So purchase services is 54430. So I'm making a motion to reduce 54430 by $16,500, essentially funding half of what the police asked for. And I'll put that in the form of a motion.
Okay.
Well, you got your motion first is to 441.
No, it turns out from the reading of it, we don't have to 441. All we have to do is amend the committee motion.
But we didn't vote on this in committee.
Yeah, well, we had this discussion in some detail.
You did vote on it in committee, though.
No, we didn't vote on it directly. We spoke about it, but we couldn't vote on it until the police chief got back to us
then we do
with
have,
whether it could be done.
I think we do have to.
Then I'll move that we waive 441, first of all, to vote on it tonight.
Okay. So is there a second for that?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So the motion is to waive 441 to vote on this amendment. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Representative Hanlon, your
So I'll make a motion
amendment.
to then remove $16,500 from the police purchase services account, which is 544300.
Is there a second for that amendment?
Second.
Okay. Thank you. Representative Black.
Point of information. So
Sure.
really what you're doing, you've got a committee report that's decreasing correct me if I'm wrong, I'm asking this as a sincere question, to reduce your budgets by $46,500.
If you include that
but you
$16,000.
increase that reduction to $63,000.
No, it'll be 45,000 if we pass this.
It's currently
and again,
30,000.
it was.
You gave a figure, I thought, of $46,500.
With this amendment.
With this amendment. Yes,
Oh,
exactly.
okay.
So if you want to subtract 16,500 from that, that's the number we're up to right now.
Okay, so, all right, then just.
Further discussion, Representative Baker.
Yeah, through Representative Hanlon. It seems, I recall that being able to partially fund enables us, being able to partially fund this enables us to use asset forfeiture next year for the same item, isn't that?
Yes.
I think it's important to emphasize that that's part of the agreement, okay? And if we had funded more of it, then it would look like we've adopted it into the budget,
yes.
And we would not be able to use asset forfeiture for this item anymore.
Sure.
Right, okay.
And I have to commend, it was actually Representative Bryan who brought up the point, because the reality of it was, if we hadn't checked with the feds for the DEA, one possibility is that we could have passed this tonight and agreed to pay $16,500. They would have then come back and said, no, Now that you've actually adopted this in your budget, you have to pay the entire part. You can't use asset forfeiture now or from this point forward. So we wanted to be very clear on that prior to voting on it tonight, and the chief provided that, and that's why we're bringing it forward as an amendment to this motion.
Thank you, Representative. Is there further discussion? Representative Toohill.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you very much. Just to add to the excellent reports that we just got from both Representative Baker and Representative Hanlon, this is a great program that Branford runs. It's pioneering. It's true. This is what we wanted to do, make absolutely sure to check with the rules, and that's what the chief did, make sure that we can continue, if we partially use asset forfeiture funds, that, that we can continue to use that in future years. Because, right, the rules of asset forfeiture, you can only use them for expenses that are not typical type police activities, correct?
Yes.
So anyway, this was all checked out, and that's what's happened tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, and through you, Mr. Moderator, I mean, the reality of it was we had to be absolutely certain that if at the end of next year we didn't believe it was a worthwhile investment, if other people weren't coming on board, then we wanted to make sure that it could return to asset forfeiture. In the police chief, if he wants to use asset forfeiture for it, we don't necessarily have to pay for it. So that was what we wanted to make absolutely certain that would be good.
Is there further discussion on this amendment? Hearing none, the motion is to remove $16,500 from the purchasing services line item. All those in favor of this reduction, say aye. Aye. Opposed? The amendment carries. So the amended committee report is now a total reduction of $46,500 from the budget items under public services. Is there further discussion on those items? Representative Black.
Just through you, Mr. Moderator, you're saying that the chief was taking $9,000 salary reduction, but that's really a reduction from their proposed 13% increase. He's actually going to be making more money this year than he was last year. We're not cutting his salary $9,000.
No, the Board of Finance reduced what they asked for by $9,000.
And I'd just like to point out, I know we mentioned it earlier, you were talking about 0% wage increases, but we have pending contracts, so the money for, it's not that we're really expecting not to increase the wages at all. The money in for that is buried in contingency. So, other than that, I'm in favor of any decreases, so I'll vote in favor of these decreases, but I just wanted to make clear that it wasn't quite as responsible. And that's one of the defects with the committee process, and we'll move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Black. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the reduction to townside budgets under public services of $46,500, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Thank you. Motion carries. Riccio, I believe.
Riccio.
All right, moving on for townside budgets. Representative Bruno, Rules and Ordinances budgets.
Rules and ordinances heard 7 different departments. Planning and zoning, economic development, inland wetlands, zoning board of appeals, building department, water pollution control, and conservation and environment. 2 of the budgets came in as minus increases. 4 came in under 1%, 1% or under, and only 1 was a significant percentage of increase, but dollar-wise it was relatively small. That was economic development, and as we have been discussing, and we had a special meeting concerning this, we do encourage economic development in the town. We're trying to get the Economic Development Commission to, get Branford to be more attractive to towns coming in and keeping business, not only just attracting business, but keeping them as well. And the conclusion that I more or less came to after our special meeting was that the only way they're going to do this is to get more money, because they need to fund advertising, they need to fund promotions, they need to fund that type of thing. So with that, they asked for an increase of $6,830, which with their budget was an increase of 61%. But it was mainly to fund banners, signs, and that type of thing, which will promote economic development in Branford. I'm trying to see what items are here. I think the largest one was there is now a sign at exits 50. There are signs at exits 54 and 55 directing people to the center of town so that they would come and do business with Branford. As far as the individual votes, for planning and zoning, the motion was made to approve the Board of Finance recommended budget as presented, and the vote was unanimous 7-0 to accept. Economic development, the motion was to approve the Board of Finance recommended budget as presented. The vote was 5-0. These are on different nights, that's why there are different numbers of people who were voting. We had different attendance numbers. Inland wetlands, the motion was to approve the Board of Finance budget as recommended. The vote was 5-0 to approve. Zoning Board of Appeals, motion to approve the Board of Finance recommended budget. Vote was 7-0. The Building Committee, motion to approve the Board of Finance recommended budget. Vote was 5-0. Water Pollution Control, which is basically a self-funded department with a 0% increase because their revenues match their expenses, was a motion to approve the Board of Finance recommended budget as presented. Vote was 5-0 to approve. And Conservation and Environment, motion to approve the Board of Finance recommended budget as presented, with a 7-0 vote to approve. All our votes were unanimous. There were no changes in any of the budget amounts in our committee hearing.
Yeah, no changes. All right, thank you, Representative Bruno. So the motion out of committee is no changes to the Board of Finance recommendations for entities under the Rules and Ordinances budgets.
Yes.
Is there any further discussion on those items? Hearing none. All in favor of approving no changes to the Board of Finance recommendations, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries. Moving on to the next set of budgets. Ways and Means, Representative LaRue.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. We heard the Board of Recreation budget on April 3rd, but we voted on it on May 8th. And both the budget and the capital procurement plan, there were motions to approve as presented, and those both passed unanimously. On May 8th, we heard the sewer assessment, oh wait, that was coming up separately. Young's Park, which was approved unanimously as presented. Parker Memorial Park, which was approved unanimously as presented. Docks and recreational facilities, which was approved unanimously as presented. Public celebration, approved as presented unanimously. BCTV, Branford Cable Television, was approved as presented unanimously. Employee group insurance was approved as presented unanimously. Municipal insurance, again, was approved as presented unanimously. Pensions and contributions was approved as presented unanimously. Contingency was approved as presented with the changes that had taken place in the other committees. The reduction of $30,000 for IT broadband, and the reduction of $68,646 for the police. And that again was approved unanimously. Principal debt service was approved unanimously as presented, and interest debt service was approved unanimously as presented, and I put that in the form of a motion.
Okay. So is there a total, do you have a total reduction for?
There's none in these items because the others will come up in the separate
Yes,
items.
and later, okay. So then the motion out of committee for Ways and Means is no changes to the Board of Finance recommendations for those budget
Correct.
items. Okay. Is there any further discussion on the items that were just reported?
Yeah, I do have a question.
Yes.
But I thought there were transfers from other committees that affect the contingency.
Yeah.
So it is a change, there's no amount change, but there are changes.
Correct.
Right.
What's the total number?
Specifically, it's 3166.
No, it's 98,646.
Remember the contingency.
What is it?
98,646?
98. Yes, so then there's the reduction of 98,646, 30,000 for the IT broadband and 68,646 for the police department.
Out of contingency.
Out of contingency, correct.
Okay.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Okay, again, thank you for I don't know how any of us would live without Mr. Finch. He deserves a huge round of applause, I think, at the end of this budget or right now. It turns out that one item that I did not bring up because it comes in a separate one later on our call, I do need to bring up now. Parks and Open Space, there was a motion to reduce the travel expense by $3,500, and that passed unanimously. And since that does affect the amount that we tax on, as Mr. Finch says, we have to explain it twice, so you'll get to hear me talk about that twice.
Okay. So,
So add 3,500, I'm sorry, I'm an accountant, but I don't go that fast. 98,646 plus 3,500, 71,146. 73,146. 72,146.
That's the reduction.
Correct.
Is that the reduction?
Yes.
71.
72,146.
72,146.
Okay.
Out of Ways and Means.
Yes. 72,146 is the reduction out of the Ways and Means budget items.
Okay.
Representative Black?
Yeah, so just to clarify, and Jim, correct me if I mean, this is a reduction of 3,500, sorry, this is a reduction of 3,500 from the rec department's operating transfer.
Not grant.
No.
Parks and Open Space.
Okay, I thought that came out of Parks and Rec, no, okay, all right.
No.
Rosanna Dana would say?
You know Jim Finch.
Representative Black, if you want to take it out of Park and Recreation, that's okay.
I thought it was
Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
It's 102,184, and I got the 30,000 there. 102,184. Sorry about that.
102,184. Okay.
Accountants never be trusted with that account.
I think the fourth selectman would have a problem.
All right, so the motion out of Ways and Means is a reduction of $102,184.
Correct.
Is there further discussion on that reduction? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving this, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Representative LaRue. Last part of the town budgets, Representative Amore, I believe there's a couple of education items that you heard.
Yes, on the call, it is called the Board of Education Daycare Fund Budget, but we know it as the school-age, Branford school-age child care program.
Oh, no, not yet. No, your libraries.
Oh, the library, sorry. Yes, James Blackstone Memorial Library, the committee unanimously voted to approve. Microphone, please. Sorry. The committee voted to unanimously to approve both the operating and capital budgets as recommended by the Board of Finance. I'll put that in the form of a motion.
Okay. So no changes.
No changes.
Is there any further discussion on the motion to approve the library budgets as presented? Representative Brooks?
Blackstone Library.
Oh, Blackstone Library, sorry.
Was this Blackstone?
Yeah, Blackstone.
Sit down. I'll wait for the next.
Do you want to just do both of them in one motion? Willoughby Wallace?
Well, they're different. Yeah, well, I can.
Yeah, because it's still a committee report.
All right. So, Willoughby Wallace Memorial Library Committee voted to approve this budget as recommended by the Board of Finance. I'll put that in the form of a motion.
All right. Representative Brooks.
because I like to be a man of my word, I said in the committee time that I would bring this up tonight, perhaps. So I'm just going to bring it up, but I'm just going to bring it up as a point of information, if I could. That one of the things the Board of Finance cut was $10,000-ish, $10,005 from the Willoughby Wallace operating budget for somebody to do passports, to help with the passports, the influx of passports. Their passport applications have risen over a 3-month period by, I think, close to 70 applications in that 3-month period, because the post office is no longer doing them. The town hall only does them Tuesdays and Thursdays from 2 to 4. I know we can go at that time, but no offense to the town hall, please don't do something awful to me. So I just want to say to the library publicly now that I would encourage them, if they find themselves not being able to handle the influx of traffic long period, that they should come back to us, and that we would, or at least I would, try to be a champion to try to help them in that, getting that process done. That's it.
Thank you,
I don't have a
Representative.
motion.
That's okay. Representative Imprado.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Just to follow up to Representative Brooks, I guess my question would be to Blackstone. Do they share it? No?
Willoughby.
Yeah. No. I'm talking about sharing in the burden of these passports. Is there a way that Blackstone could move to help with some of that burden of the 70 passports that we heard that came in the first quarter of this year? So just a question, don't know the answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Prado. All right, so is there any further discussion on the library budgets? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the budgets for the 2 libraries as presented by the Board of Finance. All those in favor of approving those budgets, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, that motion carries. And I believe that's all of the town budget items for item 6. And there may be somebody that needs to check this, but according to my math, that comes to a total of $176,914 of reductions from town department budgets that were presented to the Board of Finance, or from the Board of Finance.
Mr. Finch? Jim, is that the right figure?
Oh, man. Uh-oh.
78,230.
Well,
Sure you didn't have
Contingency, 30
contingency twice?
oh, yeah. That's what I did. 78,230. I also have that written down here earlier, so I'll go with that one. 78,230. Yeah, because I did the contingency. Yeah. Yep. Okay.
So, Mr. Morado, Jim, so what's that put the town budget at right now?
Yeah.
That puts the town budget at 47,529,887.
47
529,887.
or 29, 87, you said?
429,087.
47.
529,887.
887. So the amended motion that Representative Baker made a while ago is to approve an appropriation for all town departments' operating budget and capital for fiscal year 2013 to 2014 of a dollar amount of $47,529,887. Everybody agrees? Is there any further discussion? Representative Granach.
Yeah, just very briefly. Microphone.
I think you're loud.
I don't have in front of me the percentage of the increase on the town side, but I just want to compare it to the Board of Education's 2% increase that we gave. Interesting how that number 2% came on.
I got the education being 51,787,330.
Jim,
But
do you
I'm
have
adding capital into it.
Yeah, so just
See 51,303,
Yes,
54, then
yes.
this comes to 50, again, 47.
Yep, so, all right. So then the motion on the floor is to approve the amended budget amount for all town departments for a total of $47,529,887. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none.
Roll call, please.
Roll call?
Representative Baker's motion was to go with the initial figure.
Yeah, and it's since been amended.
Okay, so now, does he want to amend that to the new figure? To make it, because all the community reports came through, so what we should do is, Representative Baker, you should amend your motion now to the new figure.
I think it has been amended by the committee reports.
You want, should we amend it? So,
Yeah.
okay, so we're going to vote
So we're
on-
good. So we're voting on that dollar amount.
Okay, so we'll have a roll call vote.
Yeah, roll call vote.
So this is item 6, the budget itself.
Yes.
47,529,887. Okay, we're voting on the town side. This is the amendment of the amended budget of $47,529,887. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Representative,
roll call.
I'm doing roll call.
No, there's people voting already. They're in a hurry.
We got a long way to go yet. Yeah. Representative Abiulugma.
Yes.
Yes? Representative Bryant.
No.
Representative Amori.
Aye. Yes.
Yes? Representative Baker.
Yes.
Representative Black.
No.
Representative Brooks.
Aye.
Representative Bruno.
Yes.
Representative Davis.
Yes.
Representative Dakovich.
Yes.
Representative Flanagan, no. Representative Gernalch.
Nay.
Representative Hall.
Yes.
Representative Hanlon.
Yay.
Representative Hanson.
Yes.
Representative Imperato.
No.
Representative Ingraham.
No.
Representative Janover.
Yay.
Yes? Okay. You saying yes? Okay. Representative Joncas.
Aye.
Representative LaRue.
Yes.
Representative Maynard.
Yes.
Representative Malisi.
Yes.
Representative Nargi.
No.
Representative Ricchio.
No.
Representative Sandler.
No.
Representative Salvaggio.
Aye.
Representative Stanlick.
Aye.
Representative Torelli.
Yes.
Representative Toohill.
No.
Representative Walker.
Yes.
You're voting yes?
All right.
Yes.
All right, so the town department budgets pass. And with the combination of the Board of Education budgets and the town department budgets, I have a total town operating budget of $98,833,741. Come on, don't give me that face. Yeah, those are appropriation to put them into those funds.
Coming up with that.
I don't know. He didn't give me a very good face when I
He's
said
making
it.
faces back there.
What's that? Yeah. Well, I'll change my notes.
You changed to whatever Jim said?
That's it.
Wasn't that 3,500 there? That's in the open space fund.
Yeah, but it came out. It came out.
Yeah.
Well, that's in that number already. But we're here to amend it for a couple numbers. I just changed the numbers here.
We're okay up here.
Yeah. It's reflected the change.
Yeah.
Maybe we can take a look.
Okay, my text is
How far is it? Jim, how far are you? Jim?
We can stand. We can take a recess if we want to get the number. How long? 5-minute recess. Is there a second? All right. Motion to recess. Everybody in favor? Opposed? We stand in recess. already did my best.